Okay, this next one, we're cranking up the juice just a bit. So notice first thing we do, since the degree of the numerator is greater than the degree of the denominator, we do our polynomial division. And so we end up with this beast reduces down to x plus 1 plus 4x over that giant denominator. Now, as usual, we need to factor the denominator. So the thing we see is you've got a over b is 1 over negative 1. C over d is negative 1 over 1. So you see a over b equals c over d. That means we can group it 2 and 2. So that means our denominator is going to be x cubed minus x squared minus the quantity x minus 1. And so we say greatest common factor of the first group is x squared. Greatest common factor of the second group is 1. So now I have x squared minus 1 times x minus 1. And clearly x squared minus 1 is x plus 1, x minus 1. So we end up with our factor in the denominator, x plus 1 times x minus 1 quantity squared. Okay, so, well, let's just do it like this. We can do the integration on x, and that's going to be x squared over 2. Do the integration on 1, that's going to be x. Now we have the integral of this thing, which is 4x over x plus 1, x minus 1 quantity squared dx. Now, the complication here is that we have a repeat factor here. You've got x plus 1, x minus 1, x minus 1. Anytime you have a repeat factor, you have to take into consideration both of the factors. So what we're going to do then is we're going to make this thing a over x plus 1 plus b over x minus 1 plus c over x minus 1 squared. So notice we had to build our way up to the x minus 1 squared. If there had been an x plus 1 squared in there, we'd have had to go a over x plus 1 plus b over x plus 1 squared, and then plus c over x minus 1 plus d over x minus 1 squared. So anytime you have a repeat pattern, you have to build your way up to it. So now we realize that this thing has to equal what we started with, so we need our common denominator. So let's make some room here. So we've got a times what's missing under a. So a times x minus 1 times x minus 1 quantity squared plus b, wait a minute, cut tick two, just messed up. The common denominator here is just going to be x plus 1 times x minus 1 quantity squared. X plus 1 times x minus 1 quantity squared. We don't have to multiply all three of these together because we have a common factor in x minus 1 quantity squared. So now the A is just missing the x minus 1 quantity squared. The B is missing the x plus 1, x minus 1. Yeah, rats. I knew I'd run out of room. Okay, cut, take two. Okay, so we've got A times... I should edit this, but I'm not going to. So you're just going to have to watch all this screwing up. A times x minus 1 quantity squared. That's all we need is x minus 1 quantity squared. Plus B. Now what's B missing? It's just missing one of the x minus 1's and the x plus 1. So B times x plus 1 times x minus 1. And then what's the C missing? Just an x plus 1. Okay, so all that is going to have to equal the original numerator, which is 4x. Now, we run into a problem because if we just let, well, let's see. If we let x equal -1, then B and C drop out. If we let x equal 1, A and B drop out. Yeah, we're good. Okay, so let's do that. So we let's get rid of B and C first so we can solve for A. So we let x equal -1. So in that case, we've got -1 minus 1 is -2 squared, which is 4. A equals -4. So A equals -1. Now if we let x equal 1, if we let x equal 1, then that means B drops out, but A and C are both in it. Okay, so we actually have to do a new technique. This is another way of doing it. What I'm going to do is match up the x's with the common coefficients. So basically, I've got x to the first power is multiplied by 4. That means, let's just distribute this out. So I've got A times x squared, x minus 1 quantity squared, which is going to be x squared minus 2x plus 1, plus B times x squared minus 1, plus C times x plus 1. Okay, so now what we do is we say we've got how many x squareds? Well, the x squared is going to be A times x squared plus B times x squared. And there is no C here, and there is no x squared over here. So A plus B has to equal 0. All right, now the x, I'm going to distribute the x, or distribute the A. So I've got, in x's, I've got -2a. There is no bx, and there's a cx. And how many x's do I have on the other side? 4. So basically what I'm saying is that anything times x squared on the left has to equal that same thing times x squared on the right. Anything times x on the left has to equal anything times x on the right. And the x to the 0, or the constants, would be a times 1, which is a, plus b times a minus 1, which would be minus b, plus c times 1 equals, over here we have no constant, so it's 0. Alright, so basically I have 3 equations with 3 variables. Now, fortunately, I just found out that a is negative 1. So, since I know a is negative 1, then I know b has to be positive 1. And now since I know, well, yeah, and here again, I know a is negative 1, so that's negative 2 here. I add 2 to both sides, and I get c equals 6. Now I can test it. A, which is negative 1, minus b, something is gone awry. Okay, the x squareds, a times x squared minus 2x plus 1, plus b times x squared minus 1, plus c times x plus 1 equals 4x. Okay, so a plus b plus no c equals 0. Then negative 2a plus c equals 4. And a times 1 minus b times 1 plus c equals 0. So maybe a does not equal negative 1. Let's see. 4a equals negative 4. So a is negative 1. That means b has to be 1. Oh, rats. You guys probably caught the mistake long before I did. If a is negative 1, that makes this a 2. So I subtract 2 from both sides, and I get c equals 2. Now I've got negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2, plus 2 equals 0. So everything works. Okay, that's happy. Okay, so we're back up to our original. We've got our a, b, and c. So let's do our whole integral now. The entire integral is going to equal x squared over 2 plus x plus the integral of negative 1 over x plus 1 plus 1 over x minus 1 plus 2 over x minus 1 quantity squared. dx. Okay, so now we can say this equals x squared over 2 x squared over 2 plus x minus natural log absolute value of x plus 1 plus natural log of x minus 1 plus, now you can't do natural log here, we have the integral of 2 over x minus 1 quantity squared dx.